Welcome back to a brand new Axis and Allies video for 1941. Today I'm going to be going over the fifth and final power of this game, which is the United States. So first thing as the United States you want to do is to make some purchases. What are you going to purchase exactly? Well, first you need to assess your situation on the board because it will kind of depend on that. Generally, so your first objective to look for is the Western United States safe. Is there any transports in these areas that could potentially attack here? And are you able to defend the Western U.S.? If you're able to defend the Western U.S. comfortably, then that should be all right. You don't have to make any infantry there. So that's your first objective. Make sure the U.S. is safe. Your second objective would be to check and see if your allies are okay and do they need extra defense. If not, you're going to have to make some units to send over there. And third objective, once all of those conditions are met, so your allies are safe, specifically the Moscow area, Moscow, Russia capital, and India. These two areas are going to need your support. They can't defend them on their own because, as you can see, the Soviet Union is lower than Japan, and the United Kingdom is also making less money than Japan, and you are the one that needs to lend lease your units to them, essentially, and have them help them out defend their areas. So as you can see here, and also this is a little detail that you may have an argue with your buddies at the gaming table. But as you can see here, there's a 15 here right next to the U.S. icon. It is in fact supposed to be 17. There is just a little bit of a printing error there. It also will say this on the back of the rulebook that it's supposed to be 17. So if you ever have that argument, just go ahead and actually count up the territories or just show them the back of the rule book. That's just a little printing error on the game board there. But yeah, so you're going to make the most money out of anyone in the game, early game at least. And so second objective, keep those guys alive. Send units that could keep them alive. And your third objective in this game is to take out one of the Axis capitals. So if we go over here to Japan, Japan is going to be kind of difficult to take on. Just like in history, the mainland of Japan can be heavily defended, and it's going to be incredibly hard to take over because against a good Japanese player, they're just going to send all their fighters on Japan, and it's going to be absolutely impervious to any sort of naval invasion. What you can do as Japan, though, is to cripple them by taking all of these islands that they start to take. So try to liberate all those islands and take out their presence in China. That is what you can do because Japan won't be able to have enough troops to defend these islands. And you and just like one transport can send this fleet and just kind of harass the Japanese as they try to deal damage to your other allies. So that's the best way you could kind of deal with Japan, and I recommend to go for Germany. Their capital is much easier to take, and you could, there's a lot of territories around that you could keep transporting troops in and start stacking their territories. So highly recommend to focus on Germany. So to do that, you're going to have to build a navy. So you need some sort of navy purchase eventually. So, and to clear out their troops here and their battleship, if they still have their battleship. So to get into the purchases, what unit in this game will help out defending your allies as well as giving you a strong naval presence? Well, it is going to be the fighter. Okay? 9 times out of 10, as the USA, you want to build a single fighter. Why do you want to build a fighter? Because fighters are incredibly good for helping out your allies. They're super fast, and if the UK had managed to take North Africa, you could send one of your fighters in one turn from North Africa, and then from this area you could do 1, 2, 3 and land them in India, or it could do 1, 2, 3, 4 and land them in Russia if needed. So they're very fast. They'll provide rapid protection to Russia and India. And these fighters in this game can also be used for naval defense. What do I mean by that? So these fighters can also be used to place down. And if you were building an aircraft carrier this turn, those fighters that landed in that sea zone, you could build an aircraft carrier and land those fighters on top of it. It is instant naval defense, and these fighters can go ahead and attack stuff and go ahead and reposition themselves as needed in this game. So Air Force is key in this game, especially the fighters. You want to always try to build as many fighters as possible in this game until the point where the Russians are safe and India is safe. They have enough defense, and you want to slowly start to build a navy to go across into Germany. So turn 1, a fighter is generally going to be your best option. Now there are some situations where you will have to be forced to make a navy. So when this happens, when do you need to build a navy? So when you are building a navy in this game, the best navy units you're going to have are going to be your aircraft carrier and the destroyer. Aircraft carriers and destroyers are going to be your best naval units. The battleship. It is going to be very tempting to get the battleship. However, because they're so cheap in this game, they're only 16. But it's just not worth it, okay? The battleship is not worth it. You could use... Would you rather have 2 battleships or 3 fighters that could go ahead and defend pretty much any location on the board? These battleships are basically only used to transport... They're just kind of used to transport transports, to be honest. They aren't really that good, and they're kind of a waste of money. For destroyers, you generally only need 1 destroyer per fleet, just to keep those submarines away from your aircraft carriers. The main naval unit you're going to get is aircraft carriers and fighters in this game. And yeah, so aircraft carriers and fighters. So when do you build an aircraft carrier turn 1? So when this happens, this means that you have this situation up here. So if you have this situation up here and you have a destroyer here that could attack, as well as these 2 fighters that can attack, and you're not feeling confident that they can both be killed and one of these submarines will be able to hit your destroyer back, you're going to make an instant aircraft carrier turn 1, and you're going to go ahead and send this plane. Actually, you want to actually send this plane into North Africa. Send the plane from Eastern US into North Africa if you have it, and then send in the 2 fighters over here. And you're going to send these over here to this aircraft carrier here. So you can literally just make an instant navy right here. And these 2 submarines have no chance of taking out whatever is there. Absolutely no chance. That is when you would build an instant navy. Well, an instant aircraft carrier. So when do you build the battleship? There is a rare condition where you will have to build a battleship in this game. So I'll go ahead and put these guys back here. And yeah. So, when do you build a battleship? So, there's a move the Japanese sometimes would like to play here. It is the Pearl Harbor attack. So what they will generally do is they will have just a battleship and a aircraft carrier and 2 fighters right here. And what they would do is send in all of this into Sea Zone 40 and take out your battleship. When the Japanese do this, what you want to do is re-attack Pearl Harbor. So you're going to send everybody here. Send this little submarine also, as well as send in the bomber over here, as well as the other fighter that was in that zone, and that wouldn't have gone into North Africa. All these planes and units can go ahead and reach the sea zone, and you'll have an advantage in this battle. And your goal is to take out their fighters from this game, so that they won't use these fighters to other locations, such as India and China. So you always want to take this battle as a USA if you see the Japanese player do this. So that means, see, all these guys are dead, and you have just like a fighter and a bomber remaining, maybe like your submarine. From here, you can go ahead and just probably evacuate this guy. Go ahead and send him somewhere else over to the Atlantic where he'll get more value. But then pretty much you've hindered the Japanese progress, and they don't really make that much money early game. And then over here, if you can't build a aircraft carrier, so say all of your fighters were in that battle, and these 2 submarines could potentially attack this area. This is the only situation where you need to build a aircraft carrier turn 1. I mean, a battleship turn 1. Because having that right there will be able to defend from these 2 submarines here. So keep that in mind. But late game, just don't build battleships. Battleships are not worth it. Only in this situation. And then so that's generally it. So yeah, this battle over here, go ahead and take that. We'll talk about the Pacific a little bit more. Sometimes the Japanese don't attack Pearl Harbor, and you could have you'll have your battleship right here, ready to go. In this scenario, I generally don't like to abandon the Pacific. A lot of players will try to, as the USA, try to abandon the Pacific and send all these guys into the Atlantic. But really, that just kind of is going to movement impair your troops. So it's going to take them a couple turns in order to get some value, maybe get some value on the German side. So with this fleet, I like to, if this guy is alive, of course, go ahead and start pressuring Japan and their islands. So if Japan just has stuff there, you could go ahead and just send in your battleship and just keep your guys right here, pretty much. You want to keep your guys at least 3 tiles away from their main fleet. But if they put their guys down here or so, you could start moving them up this way, but just be in range to potentially capitalize on whatever mistakes that they do. And so yeah, just keep this fleet around, and if the UK takes out a part of their fleet or something, you'll be able to capitalize and destroy the rest of them pretty much. So just kind of start looming around with this US fleet here, because if you just go ahead and send them over, they're going to be gone from the game for 3 turns, and doing this will allow them to apply some pressure to the Axis, and all the pressure you do is going to be needed. So yeah, go ahead and do that, and then just start island hopping if you can. But over here, so that's the general idea for the Pacific, and then try to obviously take coastal China and Manchuria. As the Allies, you should try to take these territories and hinder Japan before going after Germany. And yeah, over to the Atlantic. So from here, try to, if you do get the fighter turn 1, and say there was like no submarines here, or whatever. Next turn, you will be able to make a aircraft carrier and a destroyer because you will be saving some money after buying that fighter. Go ahead and place them like down here. Turn 2, and then turn 3, go ahead and put them up here, and then send your guys up there as well, and then you should be in a position to start landing in Western Europe. And yeah, so just from there. There's also once you do get to the point where you are able to comfortably hold Sea Zone 6 and send troops over, what you want to do is what you want to do now is focus on your logistics. So this is it's going to take some math, but there's an easy way to get this done. So if I go ahead and grab a couple transports here. When late game comes around, and you pretty much have a ton of fighters on Russia, and they're pretty much safe. Russia's pretty much safe. India's safe. And while that's happening, you want to start building a navy and start sending as many troops over into Europe as possible. So you should have at least 4 transports as the United States. So try to get to at least that much. And when you do, make sure you have enough troops to keep sending over and back. A good way to know how many troops you need to send over is however many troops are in however many transports are in Sea Zone 10 is how many troops you are going to need next turn. So say we are logistically set here, and and for each transport you want to try to have at least a tank and an infantry, and send them over. So tank and infantry, you send them over, drop them off in Western Europe, send the other one right back. But if this situation happens where you don't have anything, this is kind of bad for you, because you always want to have good logistics as the USA. So always try to always make sure that you have enough troops to send over with your transports. So if you go up here, and they're about to bring 4 troops across this turn, we will need to build at least 2 tanks and 2 infantry next turn to be able to send them over again. So if these guys go ahead and are sent over that turn, and we went ahead and built 2 more infantry and 2 more tanks. Next turn happens, we'll send these guys right back, send them up, and if you have the money, go ahead and hold on, here it is. If you do in fact have the money for it, go ahead and make another transport and a tank and an infantry this turn. Go ahead and send these guys over. Send them across. These guys will go up into this sea zone. Next turn happens, you will need at least a tank and an infantry because there's 1 transport in this sea zone. So make a tank and an infantry here. Send these guys over. These 2 guys that went to these 2 transfers that came back will come back. And so yeah, we actually did mess up our logistics because I didn't account for the 2 transports that just sent their troops over. But anyway, that's kind of the gist of it. Just make sure you have the correct amount of troops here for your transports that are leaving Sea Zone 10. Then as you can see, you could pretty much put a whole ton of troops on Germany. And yeah, so that's kind of the general idea for the United States. North Africa is very key. Make sure you send in early game. Go ahead, try to take North Africa. Send in your fighters from here into Russia, India, and then yeah, when it comes to late game, go ahead and make sure your logistics are good. And if you control all of China, go ahead and put all of your fighters here in Russia. If you do have your fighters here in Russia and you have the Western Europe province and like the Germans are kind of over here, these guys can actually hit Germany if you have Western Europe or one of the territories next to it. So if Russia's kind of under threat, you could leave your fighters here and they'll also be able to attack Germany. But yeah, that's pretty much generally the gist of the USA strategy. Just make sure whoever's better at math, honestly, is probably the best at the USA in this game, because it does take a lot of logistics, but it's quite simple once you understand it. That's pretty much it. I hope you guys enjoyed and you learned something new, and yeah, you'll be able to dominate the Axis in your next game. See you guys in the next one.